Hello everyone, welcome to Oddities. I am Fur, and this little one is little Sasquatch that I made, needle felting with a little portal on its tum-tum. And this is the subject of today's video. It is my first in many installments of special interest videos. This one is Don't Piss Off Sasquatch, a.k.a. the forest people. I have my theories about what really pisses them off, and I once pissed one off big time, and I will tell that story toward the end of the video. But I'm going to save that till the end. So I, like probably many of you, have had so many paranormal experiences throughout my life. And that's why it's a special interest. I'm fascinated by ghosts or spirits and aliens and cryptids. I'm obsessed with cryptids. And this video is in honor of my favorite cryptid. And I have had several experiences with Sasquatch. And they all began when I moved to the Pacific Northwest. So I lived in the mountains in Utah. I lived in Lake Tahoe. I lived in Colorado for 13 years before moving to the Pacific Northwest. And I never had any experiences with Sasquatch in any of these other places that I know of. I may have been missing signs, but nothing blatantly obvious. But I always believed in them. I've always been a believer based on other people's evidence, and just like I'm very open-minded. And if you believe in aliens and you believe in, spirits and, all kinds of things that defy the laws of, science that we are taught from the time we're in school, then you probably are open-minded to lots of other things. And so, yeah, maybe we should call this woo-woo corner, because I am one of the woo-woo people. I believe in things that a lot of people are, a lot of people that believe in Sasquatch believe that they are just primates or hominids. I moved to the Pacific Northwest in late 2008. And I didn't have any experiences until August of 2011. So where we lived when we moved here was up in the foothills of the Olympic Mountains on the Olympic Peninsula. And little did I know that this is a hot spot for them. But one day I was out in the yard, and it was the light of day, and I heard this cry, this long, mournful cry that gave me full body chills. Now, like I said, I've lived in the mountains for a long time, and I have heard, I know what a bugling elk sounds like. We had them outside of our window when I'd wake up in the morning, because we lived on a giant ranch, and that was normal. I know that rabbits can sound horrendous when they're in danger, and coyotes and foxes and all these different animals can make some really strange. Deer can make really weird noises. So when I heard this cry, I knew immediately that it was not an animal. it was not a human. And that leaves one other thing. And I immediately knew what it was. Even though I hadn't been watching shows about them, I hadn't heard, people's recordings. I just wasn't aware, but I immediately knew what it was because there was nothing else it could have been. The sound was so, like, I could tell it was far away. It was probably miles away. But it was so, like, deep. It was so powerful beyond any creature that I'd ever heard in my life. And it sounded, like I said, mournful. And it was so long, too. Like, whatever had to have, like, serious lung capacity to be able to cry out that long and that powerfully. So crazy story is the next day it happened again, and I had my phone on me and I videoed it. And it was the middle of the day and my neighbors were playing pickleball, so their loud, like, pickleball noises were puck, 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 and it was very distracting. But my youngest and I were outside and we heard it again, and I recorded it, and you can hear it. And for many years I lost that video and I couldn't find it, and I was like, that's so weird. Well, anyway, I found a way to find it, and it's a long drawn out story, but it was like an old email address that I had, and I got back into it and I found that I had sent it to a relative of mine. So anyway, I found the video. So after that, I got really into it and I started watching shows about it, and I would hear the same type of sound recorded, and they would say that this is a Sasquatch, right? So I was like, yep, that is what I heard. Or it would be similar. I feel like mine was more mournful. For some reason I felt like it was a female Sasquatch mourning the loss of a baby. And don't ask me why I think that. It's just the way it sounded to me. And I very well am no expert, so I could very well be wrong, but that was the feeling I got. So after that, didn't really have any other experiences for many years. I didn't hear them again. But I know now that I definitely was in a hot spot. And after, like, watching shows that talk about the Olympic project and I think Project Bigfoot or whatever, Finding Bigfoot, not the one with Bobo, but the one with Cliff Bergman and the woman, the primate researcher. I can't remember their names, but that one, they came to the Olympic Peninsula. Anyway, I know that this is a hot spot, and it makes a lot of sense. I also remember living in town, I kept seeing this old guy driving this van that was all decked out with all this electronic equipment, and he had a wolf hybrid dog, and he talked about how he was a Bigfoot researcher. That was his term, Bigfoot, not mine. But so anyway, I was like, okay, I have landed in the territory. So let's see, my next experience, I believe I've had several experiences where it could have been like I feel like I'm being watched, or, I mean, that's happened a lot in the woods where I get this uneasy feeling. I feel like I'm being watched, or I hear wood knocks, or, rocks, like landing on a trail I'm walking on, which is very strange. It's not like they're falling down the slope. So, but nothing provable, right? So the next thing that happened was I was hiking to Tamanawas Falls, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it was in Oregon. I went on a road trip by myself, just like I needed to get away, and I wanted to drive to Mount Hood and check out the waterfalls along the gorge, and because I love doing that. And but I'd never been to Tamanawas, so I was by myself, and I decided I was going to hike there. And it was later in the day, and there was some snow on the ground. And I got out there, and the whole time I felt good, and I got out there. There was one other person there. I hadn't seen anybody else on the trail. And that person left shortly after I got there, and I was all alone. And I spent some time there, and then I started walking back and realizing it's the sun's starting to go down, and it was cold, and I was like, I need to go so that I'm not walking back in the dark. And I started getting this feeling, this very uneasy feeling, that I was being watched. And not only that I was being watched, but that I was being followed. And I felt like I was in danger. And honestly, at first I thought it's a mountain lion or a cougar. And I was like, shit, I'm all by myself. I don't have any protection. I'm not carrying a firearm or pepper spray even. And this is scary. So I tried to just stand tall and just keep walking and not panic. And I assumed that that feeling would pass. Now, this was like 2 miles that I had to go back to the car. And the entire time I was walking back, I was constantly looking over my shoulder and really felt like something was following me and wanted me gone. So that was scary. And this is not anything I can prove. It could have been a cougar. But I made it out alive. But since that moment, I've just been a little uneasy hiking alone. And it was the first time I felt kind of unsafe. And so the next experience I had was a recent one, and this was a totally different kind of vibe. I was with my friend, and we were looking at a piece of property that was for sale, and it was up near where I lived when I first moved to the Pacific Northwest. It was up there, and we were walking around, and we heard, it was daytime, and we heard in the bushes, like maybe 20 feet away, we heard clicking. And again, I've lived in the mountains, in the woods for a long time, and I know what woodpeckers sound like, and I know what bugs sound like, and all the different sounds, right? This was a clicking that it wasn't a raven or a crow. I know they can make a lot of cool noises. This was something different. And it sounded like artificial, like it's really hard to explain, but it wasn't a natural sound. And it was very rhythmic and repetitive, and like something that couldn't be, it didn't sound natural. You know what I mean? It sounded like an instrument that somebody would play, like somebody who made movies and had all those weird, all the weird instruments that they use for films. It sounded like something like that. And my girlfriend was like, I heard that sound last time I was here too. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. And I go, it's a Sasquatch. And I just knew, I can't explain it to you, but I just knew it was a Sasquatch. I had no doubt in my mind. And I said to her that I think they are curious about us and they're trying to like communicate and test us a little bit. Like, how are we going to react to this? But it felt very curious and it felt completely harmless. I did not feel an ounce of trepidation or unease. I felt really comfortable. It actually felt like playful, and maybe it was a young one. I don't know. But it was amazing. And the whole time I was walking around this property with her, it's a big property, and I felt just nothing but good vibes. I never felt uncomfortable, and I was like, this place is magical. This property, there's such good vibes here, and whatever is here is welcoming you. And that's just the feeling I got. I felt like we were being welcomed. And so we went and we were hiking around, and then when we walked back by that place, probably 20 minutes later, 10 minutes later, we heard it again. And we didn't hear it until we were right up on that spot. Like, we didn't hear it from a distance. It was just when we were standing close by to that spot, and it was the same sound. And I was like, yeah, they're talking to you. They're trying to communicate. And so we left, and my girlfriend has a really good friend who is a shaman, and she has had experiences with them in the past. She's seen them transform into a cougar, or maybe they transform from a cougar. I can't remember which form they started out in, but she saw them transform. So she saw them shapeshift, which is really cool. But she called her and told her about what happened and told her about the sound, and she's like, that's a Sasquatch. And she knew immediately that that was what was making the sound. So I thought that was really cool. I'm like, yay, somebody is backing up my my instinct on that. So that happened, and that was pretty recent, and it was awesome. That was a great experience. And so the last experience that I had is, oh, actually, no, I have another one. I have another one. The angry one's coming, I promise you. So I had another experience. This one, I actually saw one. It was the first and only time I've ever seen one. And I was, I don't want to give I don't want to give a location, but it was east of Seattle, and it was on my way. I was on my way up into the mountains, and I was by myself. And I went over. It was on a highway, hauling butt, and I went over a bridge, and there was a river. And for some reason, I always look whenever I cross a river. And I look, and there is a gigantic Sasquatch standing in the river, just standing there looking down at the water, maybe looking for fish, but it wasn't moving. It was just standing there looking down. And it was enormous. If I had to guess, I would say it was around 9 feet tall, at least 8 feet tall. Maybe 10, because it was standing in the water. I don't know how deep the water was, but it was huge, and it was like a cinnamon auburn, between cinnamon and auburn color fur. And you could see how long the fur was, and the detail in the fur, but it happened so fast that I immediately was like, you did not just see that. Because I have thought I had seen one many times in the past, either out of the corner of my eye or just straight on, and I go back to the same spot and I realize it's a stump, or a tree or a log or whatever it may be, a rock. Or I catch something out of the periphery and I look and it's gone, right? So I was like, I need to go back and see if there's something in the river right there. So I did. And it took me a while to, circle back around and go back around. And anyway, there was nothing there. And I have no doubt of what I saw. So it was very, very fleeting, but I feel so privileged to have been able to see one. It was enormous. Okay, so now on to the finale, the grand finale, the time when I pissed one off. And I have never been so terrified in my life. So it was twilight and I was on my way home. I lived 2 hours from where I was staying with a friend, and I was traveling home and I was driving through the mountains. And at the time I was a photographer, so I had my cameras and my tripod and all my equipment, and I was really getting into long exposures and astrophotography. So there was one spot that had like such a cool like road bridge and then mountains and trees, and it was just such a beautiful shot that I always thought would be a really cool night shot to get, like a long exposure with either tail lights or headlights coming up or down the road and the mountains and everything. And I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to take a picture there. And it was like almost dark, but you can still see just a little bit of like blue in the sky. And so I got to the point, and there's a nice big wide shoulder right there. So I was like, this is perfect. I can park. And so I parked my car and I grabbed my camera and I grabbed my tripod, and I was going to set up in the middle of the road because, it's like, I'm not in a city. It's quiet. There aren't a lot of cars. You're not going to get run over. So I go to the middle of the road and I was like, okay, I'm going to take a handheld shot before I set up my tripod. So I take a handheld shot that shows like the light the way it really is, not a long exposure. And I was like, cool. And so then I grab my tripod and I start to set up my tripod in the middle of the road. Before I could get set up for a shot, something came barreling through the woods. It was one of the loudest things I've ever heard in my life. From my left, in the trees, in the forest, it sounded like an elephant running on two legs, thump, 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 and just like branches and trees just getting like smashed and crushed and snapped. And oh God, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Like the power to break things that big. Bears don't do that. I've lived with bears a lot. Maybe moose can do that, but there are no moose here. None. And it was obviously it was a bipedal creature. You could hear the footfalls. It was not a four-legged creature. There's a big difference with the sound that those two make. And the footfalls were so heavy that I could feel the ground shaking with every step that it took. And shit was breaking, and it was like a freight train coming at me. And this all was like slow motion, but also like so quick, like mere seconds. I grabbed my tripod and my camera, ran back to my car, threw it all in there, slammed the door behind me, just like panting, expecting this giant monster to come running out onto the road because it was just right there. It was like maybe the tree line started about, 40 feet from where I was standing in the road. So it was close. And it sounded like it was right there. And I expected to see it right there in the middle of the road coming at me. And there was nothing. And in fact, it was silent. When I got back to my car and I slammed my door and I turned and looked, it was completely silent. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? How is that even possible? So I turned on my car. I immediately started my car too, because I was like, quick getaway. I have to be ready. So I rolled down the window just a little bit because I was still terrified. But I rolled down my window and I listened, and there was complete silence. And it's something that I also noticed before when I got out of my car, and before I took the first picture, it was completely silent. And it was twilight, so there aren't many birds out, but it seemed extra silent. And so anyway, I was like, what in the hell? And my adrenaline was pumping. My heart was pounding. And I'm like, I need to get out of here. I knew what it was almost immediately, right? There's no doubt. There's nothing else it could have been, literally. But I drove off. I'm like, I need to get out of here. Something was telling me, get the fuck out of here. You need to leave. So I drove. And the whole time I'm driving, I'm just like replaying the whole thing in my head and thinking about all the details and going, that was a freaking gigantic Sasquatch. And it was pissed off at me, and it was telling me, leave now. And I had a camera, and I was taking pictures in the dark. And I have heard other people say that they do not like to be photographed, obviously. If they liked being photographed, there would be so much more evidence out there, right? And they know when there's a camera. You can hide it. I have seen so many different investigators talk about how they've hidden it in boxes and covered it and, all kinds of stuff to try to hide it. And they still know. They know. And maybe there was a baby. Maybe, because there was a hatchery right there. And that's another thing that I've heard, is that they're often near hatcheries. And there was a hatchery right there. And so I was thinking, okay, it did not want to be photographed. It wanted me out of there immediately. And it worked. I was terrified. I had this feeling of dread. I mean, I have been afraid a lot in my life. I used to be a crazy snowboarder and jump off cliffs. I have fallen into a crevasse. I have had a lot of trauma, and never in my life have I felt this sense of dread. When that thing was running at me through the woods, the dread was just overwhelming. And so I drove on, and I'm driving and I'm like, you know what? I still want to take a picture. I still really want, the sky is so pretty, and I didn't get my long exposure, but maybe I can get like a cool picture of the mountains and the stars coming out. And I'm like, I'm a safe distance. And so I pulled off at another turnout, and it's an overlook. And I checked on the map to see how far it was, and it was 3 miles from where I stopped and got charged, bluff charged, because that's what it was. 3 miles. I drove 3 miles. It probably took, 3 minutes going 60 miles an hour. And granted, I'm too afraid still to get out of my car. So I open the sunroof and I like poke my head out the top and I listen, and it's silence. It's the same silence. But I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm feeling this uneasy because I should or because of what just happened, and I'm just scared, right? I'm just like when you watch a scary movie and then you go to the bathroom and it's dark and you think that there's something behind you. It's not really there. You're just freaked out because of the movie. So I'm like, I'm just freaked out, whatever. So I poke my head out the sunroof and I'm getting the camera ready and I'm setting it on the thing and I'm getting ready for like a long exposure, and I take a couple pictures looking off toward the mountains, and behind me is the road and a cliff, and I hear crack, and a rock was thrown into the road behind me from the cliff above down onto the road near my car. And it was a loud noise, and you know the sound when a rock hits pavement. It's loud. And I thought, holy shit. And immediately, like, my heart starts pumping, and so I jump back in my car, right? And then I hear this like like a waterfall of rocks come down the cliff, and it sounded like something was standing on the edge of the cliff and was caving in the earth, and it was like a little mini landslide, and all the rocks were showering down onto the road. And I was like, holy crap. And I like immediately start driving away, close the sunroof and all that. And of course I looked up there and I couldn't see anything. But so immediately I'm like, how in the fuck did it get here as fast as I could? I was driving 60 miles an hour. I went 3 miles, and whatever it was either the same Sasquatch instantly like flitted or teleported or whatever to that place, or it was a family member and maybe they were communicating with each other and telling them, you need to scare her away, right? Either way, I have no doubt that first rock got thrown. It wasn't just like, a normal rock slide. And it was very obvious to me that something was standing up above on that cliff and threw that rock. Not at me. If they wanted to hit me with the rock, I'm sure they could have. But as far as I can tell from the stories that I've heard, this is what they do. They want to scare you off. They're not trying to hurt you. I firmly believe that they are benevolent. There may be exceptions, just like with humans. Some humans are evil, but I truly believe that they are actually far superior. I think they. So yeah, let's talk about what I think they are. And I want to hear what you think. If you are a believer, what do you think they are? Do you think that they are another form of a human being? Do you think they are a primate? Do you think they are from this world? Do you think they are an alien? Do you think they are an interdimensional creature being? I honestly don't know, but I don't think that they are a primate. I think they are actually much more intelligent than we are. I think they live the way we should be living. And I also think they don't always live here. I think they are interdimensional. I've heard way too many people talk about how they just disappear or watching them come in and out of portals. And I really, truly believe that they are able to come and go from our reality at will. And I think that's why we haven't found bodies or bones. And I don't know if they live here full time. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, but I just believe that they know not to trust us. I think that they definitely can create relationships with certain humans that they know they can trust. I think Barb Shoop is one of those people who they know they can trust and they build a relationship. I think people who live in areas where they can come and go and communicate and leave gifts and all that. I think they can really develop a special relationship and bond. But I think they know. I think they know what we're capable of, and I think they're far more intelligent. I think they're more pure of heart, and I don't think they're greedy. I think they just want to live and be at one with nature, like we used to be, like our ancestors were, and like we should be. And maybe they're here to teach us lessons, and how we can evolve and save our planet, because we are destroying it. We're destroying each other and we're destroying our planet. So I like to believe that these creatures, these beings, are incredibly powerful. I think they have abilities to communicate telepathically. I think when I was on that trail and I felt something was there, I think it was telling me that I needed to leave. Maybe it was protecting me from a cougar. Maybe it was telling me, who knows why, but I don't think it was out of malice. But I think they do communicate with us, and I know there's people who can actually communicate telepathically with them. And, you know, the orbs that are often seen with them, I don't know if that's spirits are often seen in graveyards too. But I think that they are beautiful, beautiful beings. And I think that we are so lucky if we get to have an encounter with them. And I think they have a lot to teach us. So I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with Sasquatch. I love them so much. I am not one of those people who wants to prove their existence, because I know they exist. And I don't think it needs to be proven. I think that I don't think there needs to be a body. I'm afraid that they're just going to be hunted down, and I hate to think of what humans can do to them. So I just think that they just need to stay away, stay safe, and any of them that want to form a relationship with one of us that they trust, that's awesome, and that's a lucky human being. But I don't think there's reason to be afraid of them, and I think people who talk about them attacking people and, you know, kidnapping them, I think that's just, you know, humans and fear. And anyway, what do you think? I am lucky to live in a place where they're everywhere, and I hope that I get an experience with them again. I don't go out trying to record them. I don't want to catch one on film. I would love to see one with my own eyes. I would love to have another experience with them that's not so scary. But I am not interested in proving anything, because I already know. And I think they're magic. So I will be doing more episodes like this where I talk about my special interests. I'll do ones about all kinds of paranormal experiences that I've had, supernatural experiences. I got some crazy stories to tell you. Also, lots of UFOs. So many things that are fun to talk about. And I look forward to hearing your stories too. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you stayed till the end, thank you so much for watching. And yeah, please comment below what you think they are, if you've had experiences, and if you have any opinions about my experiences, that would be cool. I'm super open-minded to hearing other people's thoughts and theories, and it's just awesome. They're awesome. You guys are awesome too. Thank you so much, and until the next one, be safe, be well, peace and love.